Another week of the off season is upon us, and we are still sitting back and waiting on more information regarding the relocations of teams. But we do have some updates, kind of some things that we were told was brewing behind the scenes even last year when the UFL was having venue problems with essentially the Michigan Panthers. We were also told that during playoffs, when they were trying to see if there was any other stadiums around Michigan that they could hold the USFL conference championship game, if Michigan won the division and got home field advantage, there was talk about Eastern Michigan University being one of the options. But a lot of the information coming out of there was they didn't like the gray field or the gray turf or whatnot. And that was kind of what led to this situation. Now, of course, we've got some updates on that. And we also got some updates a little bit about the venues for the UFL relocation areas, courtesy of James Larson as well, which shocked me, to be honest. But we'll talk about that here in a second. So first, let's go to Mike T-Bell with Mike T-Bell Sports in Michigan. He says, relocation update for the Michigan Panthers. He says he spoke with Eastern Michigan University athletic director today about the possibility of the Panthers being a temporary or permanent home for the Panthers, and he was open to that, but has not heard from anyone in the league since 2023, which at that point would have been the USFL, when the team used the facilities for training. And right off the bat, when I hear this, I'm like, we have heard in numerous situations. I think when the UFL was having venue issues back in 2024, right after the season, of if they were returning to Ford Field in 2025, we heard a lot of chatter going around that they were looking at other venues potentially for the future of the Michigan Panthers. Eastern Michigan University was one of those because, again, the USFL used their facilities for training in 2023. Well, fast forward to today, and now the information is coming out that the UFL has not reached out at all to Eastern Michigan University. And what's interesting about it, too, is I'll pull up here on the screen, or not on the screen here, but on my other screen, is the fact that Eastern Michigan University Stadium holds about 30,000. It's not the biggest college stadium there is, but it is a venue that could work essentially for the UFL. Yes, it's outdoors. That could cause some issues essentially with weather or whatnot. But I mean, we're taking that chance regardless of where the league is if you're not in a dome, kind of like Michigan was with Ford Field. Whether it's if you start the season earlier, you deal with winter weather, or if the season continues in the same schedule they're currently in, dealing with that summer heat. Those are just two aspects of that. But the fact that the UFL has not reached out at all to Eastern Michigan University is a telltale sign of what potentially is going on here, of that they just don't want to be in the market, apparently. And it literally makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever in that state of what is going on with it. Now, of course, James Larson did comment on the post from Mike T-Bell, and basically stated, not a good sign for those hoping that the league could sort something out to keep the team in Michigan. He says, as previously released in my reports, plus Mark Perry from UFL News Hub, Ford Field cost an absolute arm and leg, and it is not a league-friendly deal that's worth the investment. It's impossible to keep playing there and see the potential for true profitability in the near future, which, again, it makes sense. Common sense there, it makes sense. But when we are talking the overall perspective, there was even rumors going back with Eastern Michigan University prior to when the Panthers were having the issue with Ford Field and the playoffs, because of the fact of Kendrick Lamar's concert being there. They needed a 5-day prep to build the stage, to get everything ready for sound and all that type of stuff. So Ford Field had told the UFL they were not available for the USFL Conference Championship game if the Panthers had clinched their division, which meant they would be going to Protective Stadium regardless, with the Birmingham Stallions at that point. So the big part here is the fact that even during that time, I had heard reports from inside the league as well that they had reached out to Eastern Michigan University about being there or trying to get there, and they just couldn't come to a deal. That apparently is not true, at least according to the athletic director of Eastern Michigan University. Now, to put in context here, the stadium for Eastern Michigan University is just roughly about 55 minutes from Ford Field. So it's not like too far. It's not that big of a huge difference unless you literally lived right near Ford Field and that was a convenience to you going to the games. But as in the aspect of how far away from Ford Field it is, it's not really that much, especially if they were holding a conference championship game there. And I mean, if you really think about that, that could have been a way to easily move the Panthers over to that stadium. And Mike T-Bell did say, because of the fact, obviously the reports was that they didn't like the gray field. Mike T-Bell reported if the UFL decided to make EMU the permanent plan, they would consider a proposal to change the field. So again, this is another thing here that it sounds more and more that the league is not wanting to stay in Michigan for whatever reason, but it really doesn't make much sense to me in that realm when it comes down to those scenarios, especially if you have a venue that is up to hosting you, especially as we move in. It's a great segue into another thing that James Larson reported. He was on a local Birmingham sports programming this past weekend, I believe it was. And actually, was it yesterday or day before yesterday he was on? And he wanted to make, basically, as he said, still waiting for something official from the UFL in this matter. I'd hope that the outcry of support from the city of Birmingham, plus the fact that venues, listen to this closely, venues are not locked in within the new markets the league is planning to go into, is cause for reconsideration to save the USFL Stallions. I think the same could now be said for the Michigan Panthers as well. I think this is a very big disservice to the UFL fans, and I've said this all along. I am not in favor, regardless of the shiny new toys in 4 new cities, I am not in favor of relocating any team. I was even on favor of keeping Memphis Showboats intact. Now, of course, it's a little bit different now that FedEx owner Fred Smith passed away. That kind of brings a little bit more of a, okay, maybe Memphis is a team that needs to be relocated. I completely understand that. But when you're looking from the perspective of potentially Houston, the Roughnecks, it's an organization, regardless if you had the Gamblers or not, I don't think you would have had any type of difference in attendance. Just, it doesn't matter the history of the teams, the names, or anything like that. I think, again, we can go into that conversation later, but we know from a marketing standpoint and everything like that, that's the big problem here. It has nothing to do with the team identity or the branding or whatnot. I mean, they weren't a good team either. Anyways, obviously, in the end, they turned that team around with Jalen McClendon, did very good at that with Curtis as head coach. We'll still kind of sitting around trying to see if I'm going to make a video about head coaches staying or going for next year. But until we get some resolution or some confirmation about this relocation, I don't really want to address coaching because it really doesn't make sense at that point if 4 of the teams aren't even going to be around and they're just moving those coaching staffs to another location. I'm not going to even assume or think or predict where that's going to happen until we have some later word on that. But the fact, going back to what James Larson said, the fact that they have not locked in any venues within the new markets in the league, that they're planning to go into. And to me, that is a huge red flag that we've talked about for many of years, whether it was the XFL, whether it was the USFL or UFL, once they merged or whatnot, that these venue issues continue to be a sour black eye, I guess you could say, not sour, but a black eye on the league, because time and time again, we are seeing this issue come up. I mean, the only consistent stadiums we have at this point is Audi Field. Yes, there was an issue with the conference championship game with them because they had soccer planned the exact same weekend for women's and men's. Couldn't get the venue. Arlington and St. Louis are probably the two venues in this league. San Antonio obviously had venue issues this past season due to scheduling conflicts and only having 4 games. But when you look at it, Arlington and St. Louis are technically the only two venues at this point that are very, very much like glued to the UFL. Obviously, Choctaw Stadium and the history with the Dallas Renegades into Arlington in the XFL in 2020, 2023, and then the UFL in 24 and 25. We've even heard rebranding the Renegades at this point, and I've kind of floated around the talk that, hey, maybe they could move to Toyota Stadium in Frisco, Texas, kind of outside of where Cowboys training facility is compared to being right down the road from Jerry World, and having that more football feeling to the stadium and not so spread out from a baseball stadium that used to be the Texas Rangers that we've seen over the years, and maybe get a better draw in that location. But again, we are still dealing with this type of stuff where the league has not locked in venues, but they, behind closed doors, whatever you want to believe or not believe at this point, are saying that they do not have anything locked in at this point. And that's just a huge red flag to me that, I mean, whether the information leaked early or not, should be the league getting out on top of it, regardless, but it is what it is. I just think that's crazy to think that if you had 4 cities in mind that you were relocating the entire USFL division to, you would think you would have some kind of venue contracts kind of going in place, because this leaks and then all of a sudden like the venue's like, we've never heard from the UFL. What are you talking about? That's a story for another day. But again, this is a constant problem from the UFL and, quite frankly, the XFL leadership when it comes to these venue issues, because we continue to see them pop up all the time. And unfortunately, the partnership that Ford Field had with the USFL in bringing the Michigan Panthers back during the 2023 season into Michigan, into Detroit, obviously is no longer a cost-effective measure to grow the team or the league at that point. And unfortunately, that's the case, but the league needs to do something. If you don't have venues locked in, then why would you throw away one of your dominant markets? And I'm not saying the Stallions market isn't. I'm just saying that Michigan Panthers were the only team this entire season to have a massive uptake in attendance. 42% growth of attendance. And here we are, still trying to figure out what is going on for 2026. It's just confusing across the board, but let me know in the comments what you think about this information. If let's say hypothetically, you could save 2 teams out of the relocation process, which ones would it be that you would focus primarily 100% on? Would it be Michigan and Birmingham? But you've got to kind of take in consideration you could have some venue issues in those matters too. But let me know in the comments what you think. We'll stay tuned to this, and make sure you hit that subscribe button, because over 72% of everybody that views the show here on YouTube is not subscribed. You're not getting notifications when I post new videos. You are letting the YouTube algorithm decide what is coming to you. If you want UFL news here on YouTube that is up to date daily when it happens, stay tuned here, hit the subscribe button, hit the like button, and we'll see you back here on the flip side. Have a great one, everyone.